by recently placing and then pulling an ad promoting FIFA microtransactions in a UK magazine aimed for children. EA is being questioned by several government lawmakers in countries throughout Europe, but it's going to take some time before we see
Shop Black Friday offers on googlestore.com. Save $50 on Nest Hub 2nd Gen.
mass regulation or bans on this type of predatory behavior. It needs more by several government lawmakers in countries throughout Europe, but it's going to take some time before we see mass regulation or bans on this type of predatory behavior. It needs more mainstream recognition. We need greater regulatory protections here in the United States to ensure fans of all ages aren't being abused by massive corporations like EA. We need panels of players and critics together, sensible people who want to see the investment versus gameplay equation balanced once and for all. Today, there are increasing risks in video gaming, and what happens is impossible to conceive unless you are a regular FIFA player. In fact, if you mostly play sports games, you might likely be numb to all this, or perhaps in a stage of denial, smashing the dislike button on this video in an attempt to make yourself feel better for spending thousands on packs, or sensible people who want to see the investment versus gameplay equation balanced once and for all. Today, there are increasing risks in video gaming, and what happens is impossible to conceive unless you are a regular FIFA player. In fact, if you mostly play sports games, you might likely be numb to all this, or perhaps in a stage of denial, smashing the dislike button on this video in an attempt to make yourself feel better for spending thousands on packs, or promoting Ultimate Team to kids through streaming or content creation. In fact, if you mostly play sports games, you might likely be numb to all of this, or perhaps in a stage of denial, smashing the dislike button on this video in an attempt to make yourself feel better for spending thousands on packs, or promoting Ultimate Team to kids through streaming or content creation. There's usually a recurring theme involving a conflict of interest when dissecting those who are unhappy or passionately against conversations like this one. That said, a surprising number of us have discovered the same thing: a collapsed state of gameplay in favor of profit. FIFA 11 was the first sign that there could be trouble ahead, but until FIFA 16 the games were still fresh and fun. After that we began to see our favorite modes such as career mode or pro clubs completely untouched. Smashing the dislike button on this video in an attempt to make yourself feel better for spending thousands on packs, or promoting Ultimate Team to kids through streaming or content creation. There's usually a recurring theme involving a conflict of interest when dissecting those who are unhappy or passionately against conversations like this one. That said, a surprising number of us have discovered the same thing: a collapsed state of gameplay in favor of profit. FIFA 11 was the first sign that there could be trouble ahead, but until FIFA 16 the games were still fresh and fun. After that we began to see our favorite modes such as career mode or pro clubs completely untouched, while Ultimate Team was shoved into the limelight. Older FIFA games had more balanced gameplay, more depth to the core game modes, and were well received by fans. At EA, constantly dodged the ethical questions, and instead compared loot boxes to Kinder eggs with a treat inside. Despite these warning shots, EA continues to do harm by recently placing and then pulling an ad promoting FIFA microtransactions in a UK magazine aimed for children. EA is being questioned by several government lawmakers in countries throughout Europe, but it's going to take some time before we see mass regulation or bans on this type of predatory behavior. It needs more mainstream recognition. We need greater regulatory protections here in the United States to ensure fans of all ages aren't being abused by massive corporations like EA. We need panels of players and critics together, sensible people who want to see the investment versus gameplay equation balanced once and for all. Today, there are increasing risks in video gaming, and what happens is impossible to conceive unless you are a regular FIFA player. In fact, if you mostly play sports games, you might likely be numb to all of this, or perhaps in a stage of denial, smashing the dislike button on this video in an attempt to make yourself feel better for spending thousands on packs, or promoting Ultimate Team to kids through streaming or content creation. There's usually a recurring once and for all. Today, there are increasing risks in video gaming, and what happens is impossible to conceive unless you are a regular FIFA player. In fact, if you mostly play sports games, you might likely be numb to all of this, or perhaps in a stage of denial, smashing the dislike button on this video in an attempt to make yourself feel better for spending thousands on packs, or promoting Ultimate Team to kids through streaming or content creation. There's usually a recurring theme involving a conflict of interest when dissecting those who are unhappy or passionately against conversations like this one. Want to see the investment versus gameplay equation balanced once and for all. Today, there are increasing risks in video gaming, and what happens is impossible to conceive unless you are a regular FIFA player. In fact, if you mostly play sports games, you might likely be numb to all of this, or perhaps in a stage of denial, smashing the dislike button on this video in an attempt to make yourself feel better for spending thousands on packs, or promoting Ultimate Team to kids through streaming or content creation. There's usually a recurring theme involving a conflict of interest when dissecting those who are unhappy or passionately against conversations like this one. That said, a surprising number of us have discovered the same thing: a collapsed state of gameplay in favor of profit. FIFA 11 was the first sign that there could be trouble ahead, but until FIFA 16 the games were still fresh and fun. After that, we began to see our favorite modes such as Career Mode or Pro Clubs completely untouched, while Ultimate Team was shoved into the limelight. Older FIFA games had more balanced gameplay, more depth to the core game modes, and were well received by fans. Now players are expected to lay out increasing sums of money for virtual card packs. Nothing has to be fundamentally changed other than the driving profit motive. The bug fixes and improvements to FIFA will come naturally after. It's clear that a large, growing number of players are bashing the game at every opportunity. Is it not worrying that we are discussing these ethical concerns rather than actually playing the games? I'd much rather be playing the games I love, and that's why I'm discussing these issues on my channel. Bringing these issues into the mainstream is one of the few chances we have to make an actual difference. Who would actually disagree with the idea of banning predatory game modes, microtransactions, and simply making competitive online gameplay about skill alone? The only people I can think of are those with a conflict of interest. Of course, these issues go well beyond FIFA. FIFA was simply the first and largest offender. Madden, 2K, and nearly every AAA sports game follows this formula. How do we break the cycle of dependence as an increasing number of young gamers become gambling addicts? This is a legit, serious issue. With a $5.4 billion enterprise with over 9,300 employees, EA definitely has the ability to be a part of the solution. Or, actually make a good FIFA game again. Let's hold them accountable. Thanks for watching.
Philadelphia's gained possession along the boards. Puck scooped up by Couturier. Here's a shot, makes the save. Quick pass to Stepan. Osterley's out of the box and both sides are back to even strength. Immediately, this becomes really frustrating.
Click this and play Control. Right now, for free. Click this. Try that. Click here. Warp there. Click and play in seconds on...
Showing up big time tonight.
I like the goalie's positioning here. He was aggressive enough to make a save on a dangerous chance.
There are mornings, and there are woke up late, out of toothpaste, spilled coffee in yourself mornings. At least with the 2 for $4, you can do breakfast your way. Want 2 of this, or that, or this and that? Mix an extra sandwich and biscuit on the 2 for $4.
Tape-to-tape feed on the blue line. Keeps a hold of it on the play. And
Today, people hate the NBA 2K series. Just the other day, hashtag #MakeTwoKFunAgain was trending #1 on Twitter. 2K has built up this reputation of being money-hungry and greedy, featuring predatory microtransactions and pay-to-win online gameplay, and rightfully so. This reputation stems from 2K18, one of the worst sports video games ever made. And while 2K18 had plenty of depth and things to do in the game, the awful gameplay and hyper monetization of my career led to such a disappointing title that despite fixing most of these issues in newer titles, 2K's reputation is still dragged down by this game. For example, I have seen countless people on Twitter mention that 2K is worse than EA, for example, because they charge you VC for haircuts. This was true in 2K18, but in every 2K since, haircuts were free as 2K tried to right their wrongs. Now, I'm not trying to say 2K21, for example, is perfectly reasonable with its microtransactions, because it's not, and I criticized this in my recent review of the game. But it's telling that people hate on 2K for things that no longer apply. It seems like 2K18 was so bad that a ton of players decided to quit buying 2K games altogether as a sign of protest. Yet we'll continue arguing that newer 2K games are bad based on flaws that only applied to 2K18. 2K18 was the catalyst that really started the trend of bashing sports games. The problem with 2K18 was that 2K tried to push the envelope as far as possible in terms of maximizing revenue. They wanted to see just how much money they could get out of their player base without completely losing them. Obviously, 2K went too far, and with gameplay that was nearly unplayable, they lost the loyalty of a large percentage of their player base. Thank you to Audible for sponsoring this video. As you guys know, Audible has helped sponsor my channel multiple times now and offers a service I personally recommend. Audible is a website and app where each month you get 1 credit you can use to listen to any title in Audible's library. And also you get full access to the all-new Plus catalog, which features thousands of select audiobooks, podcasts, guided meditation programs, and more. Whatever you choose to use your credit on is yours forever, and by going to audible.com/softdrinksports or texting softdrinksports to 500-500, you will get your first month free, meaning you can select anything in Audible's library and listen to it right now for free. I've been listening to Unscripted, a book written by Ernie Johnson about lessons he's learned throughout his life. Listening to audiobooks has been a game changer for me, as I like to play them in the background while playing video games or taking long drives. You can even download titles for offline listening, which is great for flights or when you're in a submarine. With your own free audiobook, as well as full access to thousands of included titles with the new Plus catalog, what are you waiting for? Visit audible.com/softdrinksports or text softdrinksports to 500-500 right this second. Now back to the video. The neighborhood was added for the first time, which was a much larger park with more things to do, but the neighborhood was seemingly created with the idea of microtransactions in mind. The grind was unbearable. Not only did it cost a ton of VC to upgrade your player, but things like haircuts, clothing, tattoos, and shoes were insanely expensive as well. As a rookie, you barely get minutes in games, so earning VC by playing through your games was basically a lost cause in your first season. This game wanted you to buy VC, and it made the grind to become a good player as difficult as possible without doing so. Playing games in the neighborhood really showed how big of an issue this was. You could tell when you were playing someone who spent money on the game, because they'd be a 99 overall player, but play like trash. If you didn't spend money, however, no matter how smart you'd play, you really stood no chance. Your options were to either drop $150 on VC, or grind for hundreds of hours, just to be competitive online and maybe have a tattoo or an arm sleeve. When joining the neighborhood, you were a 60 overall generic player just like today. No one is going to want to play with you because you are a complete liability with your lack of skills. You won't get dunk animations, you'll be too slow to blow by anyone, and you'll need to greenlight nearly every jump shot just to make one. Because in the neighborhood, there is no 1v1 game mode. You have to team up with people, and unless you were squatting up with friends, if you tried joining a game as a 60 overall, people would just walk away and refuse to play with you. So basically, there was a paywall to simply play in the neighborhood. Of course, this issue is still present in recent 2K games, although the grind is a bit more manageable and cosmetics are either free or much easier to come by. Still, 2K18 basically normalized the pay-to-win online competitive issue commonly seen in all sports games today, and because they went to such extremes with it, simply dialing it back a bit in 2K19, 20, and 21 led to games that weren't as bad of a grind but were still pay-to-win at heart. Most park players today will pre-order the most expensive version of the game just so they can instantly be an 80-something overall and compete. $60 no longer buys you the full experience anymore, and 2K18 set that trend. The greediness of 2K wasn't even the worst part of this game. Gameplay was atrocious. On the surface, gameplay sounded great. Here's a Reddit thread from where 2K was hyping up the game pre-launch. They claimed that pre-canned animations were gone, and player attributes determined everything. This got people excited, and obviously sounds amazing. However, in the actual gameplay, this wasn't true at all. Animations drove gameplay that year. Nearly any player, regardless of their attributes, could blow by any defender. As long as you started sprinting past a defender, there was a very high chance the blow-by animation would trigger, and then it's an easy trip to the basket with nothing the defender could do. Then there was the insanely weird change to layups. Sometimes there would be a layup meter, sometimes there wouldn't be. It felt completely random. You'd drive in for a layup, be completely open, and just miss. If there was any defender anywhere close to you, you'd miss an easy layup. This was the 2K where missed layups happened all the time. It was infuriating. They tried to make turnovers and loose balls less animation-based, but this resulted in players being unable to handle easy passes and loose ball scenarios being an ugly ragdoll mess. 2K19 fixed most of these issues, but man, it seemed like everything 2K18 tried to implement failed miserably in execution. I've noticed in recent years, hating on sports games has become more and more popular. Despite being a terrible game, Madden 18 really wasn't hated as much back then because people really didn't have that mob mentality where they were fed up and ready to unionize against a game. 2K18 was the real start of that. If you go on Metacritic, the user score was a 1.6. 2K17 was a 5.8. That's quite the jump. 2K went so hard with microtransactions, and combined with the awful gameplay, players actually got fed up and trashed the game. In a sense, 2K18 could be seen as a good thing, because this game basically woke up the majority of sports game players, as well as casual gamers from all genres. And due to how terrible the game was, it started the trend of demanding a better product from sports game companies. At the time, players were so fed up they started hyping up NBA Live 18 and 19 the next year, a game that was worse than 2K overall, but didn't feature the same predatory pay-to-win tactics in the career mode as 2K did. That was the new standard. 2K18 also proved that consumers do have at least somewhat of a say when it comes to what these companies can. Players were so fed up they started hyping up NBA Live 18 and 19 the next year, a game that was worse than 2K overall, but didn't feature the same predatory pay-to-win tactics in the career mode as 2K did. That was the new standard. 2K18 also proved that consumers do have at least somewhat of a say when it comes to what these companies can get away with. The online backlash towards 2K18 was so extreme that 2K made changes to the game's economy, making everything cheaper and reverting back to more reasonable pricing in 2K19. This showed consumers that enough noise can and will be heard to at least some extent. The funny thing is, as bad as the gameplay was and as pay-to-win as the online game modes felt in 2K18, the rest of the game was pretty good. Graphics were amazing for the time and a huge improvement from 2K17. A ton of new classic teams were implemented. As flawed as it was, the neighborhood was a cool idea and very innovative. Presentation was phenomenal.
Wanna come see what we got?
Yeah, hold on.
Go on the attack. With some moment, he scores! And this place is going bananas. They know what the moment's all about.
What the frick?
I guess we know where the first star's probably gonna be. That's
I went instantly.
Oh, what an effort. He did everything he could to stop that, but he gets beat anyway.
And you wanna come see his food?
Yeah, I was just doing something.
You start pulling your legs again.
Okay.
The Coyotes have been enjoying.
Ugh!